Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. In this edition, we'll be discussing all things Tottenham Hotspur. And of course, it has been another very eventful week. A home defeat on Saturday against Bournemouth. The manager search continues. Daniel Levy's talk at Cambridge University. Fans' favourite Managerial Pochettino is now in talks with Chelsea despite links to Tottenham. And the latest news, Fabio Paratici's appeal has just been rejected in court. We will also preview the Newcastle game, which of course takes place at St James's Park this Sunday. I have three very special guests to talk about all of these things. We've got TV and radio legend Russ Williams back with us. Russ, how are you?
I'm great-ish, and it's a pleasure to be here in the company of all three of you and everyone who's watching and listening to the podcast, and somehow we've got to find some positivity. So I think we can do it.
Somehow. How long you got, Russ?
Well, it's about an hour, isn't it? You said I don't know. We can do it, of course. You know, there's too much doom and gloom in the world.
I'm counting on you
in the hour or so.
We've also got TV presenter and podcaster Joe Forrester back with us. Joe, it's been a while. Lovely to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be back. And I know Russ is a bit down, but all I will say, guys, is misery provides content. So you've got the bright side.
All right.
That's why it's out every single day, Joe. Yes. We've also got Spurs YouTuber Patrick Tyrant with us for the very first time. Patrick, a pleasure to have you here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Pleasure to be on with such fabulous guests and co-pundits and Spurs fans. And although the mood isn't that great around the camp at the moment, I'm going to try and be positive. Obviously, every game is a fresh start, a fresh chance, a slate to right our wrongs and all of that, yada, yada, yada. And yeah, man, let's get into it. But happy to be here. And thank you for having me on, Chris.
Well, Patrick, let's start the show with you. Let me get your thoughts on the Bournemouth game very quickly. Of course, we lost 3-2 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Stellini has now been in charge for three games since Antonio Conte left. A 1-1 draw at Everton, a 2-1 win at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against Brighton, and then, of course, that 3-2 defeat on Saturday. Your thoughts on the game?
A shambles, really poor, badly managed, badly organised. The same team, the same lineup that keeps letting us down. No invention, no creativity. At first, to be honest, I'll be totally frank with you. I was happy when Conte left because I thought it was the right time. Obviously upset that it didn't work out. Really expected more, but there were so many things going on with Conte and our club. It kind of made sense. And I thought at the time that having Stellini stay was a good idea because in the few games when he did manage, when Conte wasn't away, we actually looked quite bright and lively, like against Man City. But then as things have transpired and continued, you've seen that he doesn't really have a clue. He's Conte 2.0. He's actually worse than Conte. And there just seems to be nothing there. The guy just stands there, doesn't seem to have an idea. He brought on Danjuma, that changed the game, but it was too little too late. And it just seems that, I mean, the last three games against relegation fodder, we've drawn 2 and lost 1, all from winning positions. And yeah, it just hasn't been good. I was at the game. I'm a season ticket holder, so I go to every home game at least. And the mood in that atmosphere in the stadium wasn't great. And I don't know, we just don't seem to have any inventive or creativity. We're playing teams that are worse than us, but they always seem to look better. We always seem to make them look good. And every time we play a team like Bournemouth or Southampton, we actually make them look good. And then I watch them in the next game and they're crap and they're back to the way they are. And it just goes to show that defensively we're so poor, we make subpar teams look good. Bringing Davinson Sanchez on, we all knew it was a mistake as soon as he was warming up. Bless him, I've got nothing against the guy, but he's not good enough to be playing for Spurs. And you saw that straight away. As soon as he gets on the ball, he makes everyone nervous. And then that nervousness creeps into the team and no one trusts him on the ball. And obviously you saw, well, Porro was at fault as well, but obviously Sanchez doing what he did for the first goal, got spun inside out for the second goal. Obviously a sub getting subbed is never good. And that doesn't, it doesn't bode well. Fans booed him. I'm in two minds about that. I'm indifferent. I understand fans want to voice their opinion and they're not happy. And I think he kind of got the wrath of everything that's going on. It's never nice to boo your own. It's never really going to go down well. But I also get it. I didn't boo him, don't get me wrong, but I do understand fans are just so frustrated and we're just wanting to vent and obviously voice our opinions. But when he did come off, we did look better, but it's almost too little too late. Playing a back five when we don't have 3 good defenders doesn't make sense, in my opinion. Go to a back 4, add someone in the middle, then at least you got a bit of creativity and a bit of spark. We're playing 2 midfielders that are exactly identical almost in Højbjerg and Skip. So there's no creativity. If the wing backs don't get the crosses in, there's nothing there. Kane's having to drop deeper and deeper to get on the ball. Sonny obviously isn't making those runs in behind because it's so obvious and you can just man mark him out the game. Perisic is right up Son's ass. You know what? Let me stop here because I could go on forever. I want to obviously the other guys to have their voice, but in a nutshell, not good, Chris. And I just want to see something different. That's all I can say.
Patrick, just give me a quick yes or no. Were you one of the fans singing Pochettino's name against Brighton and against Bournemouth?
Yes and no. So I did join in at some points and then at others I didn't. I don't know what I want in the sense of, I don't know if I want Poch back right now. I'd love Poch to come back, but I don't know if it's too early right now. But anything is better than...
We'll come on to it.
Yeah.
Russ, let's get your thoughts very quickly on Tottenham's defeat against Bournemouth on Saturday.
Well, there's very little I can say because Patrick said it so brilliantly. It's the same old. And I didn't go to the game. I struggled getting a stream for once. Normally I can get one. But I think I was watching BT score. And it was 2-2. 5 minutes of time added on, or 6 minutes, whatever it was, and I thought there is going to be a goal, but I never quite believed it was going to be us. I hoped it would be us, but I didn't think it would be Bournemouth actually. And fair play. I mean, Gary O'Neill has got them playing really well, and they're pretty much safe, barring a disaster now, which is an extraordinary achievement. But you know, I've said it for a long while, Chris, on this show and elsewhere. I think we should have been playing 4 at the back. Midfield with 2 in it isn't good enough, particularly with the players that we've got. Højbjerg, you can have one, Skip or Højbjerg. You can't have both. For me personally, Oliver Skip, I think, is found wanting a little bit at this level. I would like to see a Sar in there in a 3-man midfield. You know, even get Dan Juma in or put Kulusevski back a little bit. Play 2 up front, Son and Kane. I don't like Son on the left. I mean, his goal was extraordinary when he did the cut-in. And stop Harry Kane coming so deep because he's a striker. I mean, heaven forbid if he went to PSG or Manchester United, he would be told, do not go into midfield. You can go on the edge of the D and that's it. You know, you're there to get goals. A la Lewandowski, who's now at Barcelona, and all the great strikers. And it's because I've said it consistently, and I'm not going to change my mind. The recruitment at Spurs over many, many years has not had the right due diligence. We have bought far more average stroke bad players than we bought good players. And that's without me going into the managerial appointments over the last 22 years. And I just think that our squad is not good enough to be in the top 4 and to play in the Champions League. And it hurts me a lot because when we have been in the Champions League, I mean, no one will ever forget that night in Amsterdam. Extraordinary night to be a Spurs fan. The final was very disappointing, and Poch on the pitch, you know, showing real emotion. Forget the idiots who say a manager can't cry. I mean, that was a major achievement for him and those players. We had a really good team then. But, you know, I know we're going to come on to Daniel Levy later. Daniel Levy was smiling and clapping. Well, if you love football and you love Spurs and you happen to be the chairman of the club, you're jumping up and down out of control, I think, on a night like that. And he wasn't. And I was interested to hear this interview with him at the Cambridge University because it actually, in quite a few parts, underlines exactly why we are where we are, which is not football-wise in a good place. I'm sorry to say. But well done to Bournemouth. We were pretty abject, and we can't defend. We haven't really got any defenders. And, it's a sweeping generalisation, but you don't need to be granular to get into the problems with the players and the squad at Tottenham Hotspur. Anyone who knows anything about football, even a little bit, can see when you watch Newcastle, Man City, Man United, Liverpool at their best, Arsenal, heaven forbid, play football. It's a different planet to the pitch we occupy and the football that we play week in, week out. We're a long way off where we want to be. And how we get there is going to be a massive conundrum for Levy, the board, Joe Lewis, the playing staff, but the fans are fed up with it now. And, I'm not a Levy apologist, but I don't think he's the devil incarnate either. But even I'm thinking now, 22 years, Daniel, not really going anywhere. Thanks for the stadium. Maybe let somebody else have a go, because it isn't working.
We'll come on to Daniel Levy's comments shortly. Joe, let's get your thoughts on Saturday's game. And I also wanted to ask you, what did you think of the decision when Antonio Conte left that Stellini stayed in charge? Because, as Patrick said, everything seems to be exactly the same.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because when Conte turned up in the Premier League in 2016 and inherited that Chelsea team that I think they were playing 4-3-3, and he switched it up and started playing 5 at the back with the wing backs, and nobody had ever seen it before, and everybody tried to reinvent their side to copy that. And that's the team that won 15 games in a row or whatever it was, and actually ended up finishing 7 points above us. And we ended up finishing second that season, I think. And that was great. And that was kind of Conte being an innovator. He's not moved on since then. Obviously, he went to Italy and did the same thing because it worked over there. And let's face it, he had better players in a contextually weaker league as well. And the thing about football is it moves on and it evolves. So Pep Guardiola is a great case in point, and I'm kind of not one to say that Pep Guardiola is the messiah, because let's face it, he's always had fantastic players. That being said, that Barcelona team that he had would pass you to death. And his City team now are actually quite direct, because he knows that he evolves depending on what the other teams do and the personnel that he has at his disposal. And I think that's the issue with Conte. Not only did he not evolve, he refused to evolve. And he was so dogmatic, and he was very much the opinion that, look, I'm Antonio Conte, this is how you do things. And if we don't win, that's because you're not good enough. But to be honest, I think the way footballers move now is that it's a high pressing, fast, relatively attacking game, which is brilliant for spectators if you're not a Tottenham fan, because you get to see all these clubs play great, fun, swashbuckling football. And Conte didn't move on and do that. And the Bournemouth game was an example. Gary O'Neill has done a great job, and they're safe. And I don't think anybody would have thought that when they saw Liverpool put 9 past them back in August or whatever it was. But it's a very tired style of football that doesn't work anymore. And Christian Stellini is very much a disciple of that style of football as well. I thought maybe if they're leaving him in post, maybe there might be some kind of rift between him and Conte, certainly tactically. I mean, clearly not. And he doesn't even have what Antonio Conte does have, which is that kind of X factor, psychotic cult leader vibe, where at least you thought, okay, well, something might happen at half time to get the players going, because let's face it, he's a scary guy and he's Antonio Conte. I do think it's a bit of a hiding to nothing for Christian Stellini. He's essentially inherited a poison chalice, but he's not tried to do anything differently. And that baffles me. But then again, I suppose that's his philosophy. So it's another bizarre footballing decision that the club have made. And I know we're going to talk about people like Fabio Paratici and I guess Scott Munn, who's the new guy who's come in. But I just find it so strange that these people come in at high-level executive positions and are being paid 6 figures. And I mean, well north of 6 figures. And they seemingly don't know anything about modern football. It's just, I find it baffling, to be honest.
Would you be surprised, Joe, that if Stellini left before the end of the season? Because there don't seem to be that many fans supporting him at the moment.
I suppose at that point, the question is, who do you get in? And you kind of think there's almost like an amusing version of this where it's Tim Sherwood Gillet days. And it's just a bit of a laugh until the end of the season. I don't know. I guess it would be someone like Ryan Mason. I mean, I suppose what Stellini does is he's there. He doesn't rock the boat. And I guess any prospective managers are looking at Spurs and waiting to see where we finish. So waiting to see what competition they're going to be playing in, therefore what kind of budgets they have. I'm already at the stage, and it's a sad thing to say, and it probably has been for the last few weeks, where I've written off this season. And I'm already looking at the summer and thinking about next season. And yeah, I think that's just I don't think you want to kind of waste any time as a football fan. So it's very disappointing to have 2, 3, 4 months watching your club just exist without progressing.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same, to be honest, Joe. And I go home and away, and I love going to watch Spurs, but it just seems like we've all just written this season off again. But it is now about the club planning. And I think that's what a lot of us are worried about at the moment. Are the club planning in the right way? Where we waited 72 days for a manager and Nuno Espirito Santo walked through the door. So what are we going to get next? Patrick, let's come to you. The manager search continues, of course. The fans singing Pochettino's name. This has been going on for some weeks now. Small groups in the, during the away games. But the last 2 games at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Brighton, that was very, very loud when Stellini was sent off, walking down the tunnel, very, very loud singing for Pochettino. And of course, it happened again against Bournemouth on Saturday. Vincent Kompany's being linked with the club. Nagelsmann is also being linked, but he's had talks with Chelsea. Luis Enrique has also had talks with Chelsea, but they have now called interest. De Zerbi's name keeps coming up. If Spurs wanted to go for him, it would be 13 million euros in compensation. Will Steele's name has come up in the last 24 hours, 30-year-old from Rams. And it's been heard today from Fabrizio Romano that Chelsea have now made contact with Mauricio Pochettino. They've started to talk to him to understand ideas about the project, and Chelsea have now called their interest with Luis Enrique. It is now up to Chelsea, Nagelsmann or Pochettino. When you saw that news, how does that make you feel? How would it make you feel if Pochettino ended up going to Chelsea?
Oh, I'd be sick to my stomach. It'd be so disgusting. And we'd only have ourselves to blame because Poch is clearly waiting for contact from the club. He knows how much we love him. Fans are always, every time he posts something on social media, underneath in the comments, there's a million Spurs fans telling him how much they love him, how they want him back. Even his right-hand man, Jesus Perez, whenever he posts something, or if you check the comments, it's all Spurs fans. And I love Pochettino so much. He was the first manager that made me believe that we was onto something and that we could win things. And of course we didn't, but the progress, the football we played, the way we were viewed under Pochettino, it was so, it was scintillating football, and we started to get respect from everybody. And it was brilliant. You saw the emergence of young talent like Harry Kane, Dele Alli. He wasn't afraid to get rid of people when he first came in, like Adebayo. Basically, he's everything you wanted in a manager. I know at the end it got a bit stale. There was talks before the Champions League final that if we won, he'd be off. Stuff like that didn't sit right with me. But all in all, his tenure was fantastic. Bar the, we didn't win an away game in the last season. But when you just, Poch has been a free agent for so long. We've needed a manager for a long time. It was evident that Conte wasn't going to renew his contract, and Poch has been there waiting. And the fact that we keep coming out with all these statements that, we're not really, Pochettino's not favoured, he's not on the list, it's not this, it's not that. Poch is there waiting, and it gets to a point where it's like, you can't blame him if he needs to move on as well. But to go to Chelsea of all teams, it would just be horrible. And we all know Poch is a loyal guy. When he managed Espanyol, he said he would never manage Barcelona and that sort of thing. But then at the same time, he's a top manager. And if Chelsea are the only club that are realistically approaching him, it's almost like you can't really fault him if he does end up going there. But it would hurt me a lot. I can't lie to you. And, when he was flirting with the Man United role, when he went out with Fergie for lunch, that as well didn't sit right with me. But it wouldn't hurt me as much because it's Manchester United, and You know, although we're all big six, rivals and stuff like that, I don't really care about Man United. But obviously Chelsea, Arsenal, West Ham, those are the clubs that we hate, dislike, and we never want to see them do well. So to see Pochettino on the touchline there, it would break half of the fan base. And I know a lot of fans are like, oh, move on, this Poch, we don't, it didn't work out, he didn't win anything. But we all know if Pochettino was here and was backed, sky's the limit. It's just whether Levy would bring him in and back him. And for me, it's just Levy needs to swallow his pride, admit he made a mistake, admit the last 2 appointments haven't been right. 3 if we count Nuno. No one really counts him, but he was appointed. So the last 3 appointments haven't been right. Swallow your pride, work things out with Poch and back him. So I'm 50-50 with Poch because I do want him back. But also at the same time, I'm thinking maybe we should go in a new direction and Nagelsmann would be the perfect coach. But it's right now, it just seems like Chelsea have first refusal and whoever they don't want, we essentially get. And if we're a big club and we aim to be dining at the same table as all of these other clubs, why are we not moving like a big club? I know Chelsea have made a lot of mistakes recently, but the way they act, they're so reactive. And when they want out and go, when they want something, they go out and get it. We don't seem to have that same mentality. And that's why we're always the nearly rams, because we just don't seem to be decisive when it counts.
Russ, who is the right person for this next job at Tottenham?
Well, Daniel Levy and Donna Cullen and all the other luminaries at the club obviously don't think it's Pochettino because he would have been in a la Tuchel at Bayern Munich straight away. Big clubs make big decisions quickly. And be under no illusion, a new manager coming in, a really good manager for that game against AC Milan in the Champions League. It could have been an awful lot different, but we can't cry over spilt milk. I don't think the next manager of Spurs will be an elite manager a la Mourinho or Conte for 2 reasons. The people who make the decisions will think, well, we've tried that. That doesn't work. And also, I think there is a question of egos, I think, as well in this. And I think that we will end up with a manager. I mean, they say we want to bring in a manager, don't they, who Tottenham is their first choice. Doesn't work like that in football anymore. Sometimes you have to go and speak to somebody and maybe make them the first choice your football club is after you've spoken to them. But I don't believe anyone's ringing up Daniel Levy or Paratici up until the court hearing and saying, I definitely want to be the manager of Spurs. And in itself, it's a footballing crime, really, because we are a big club that actually doesn't really act like a big club a lot of the time and hasn't done consistently over the years. And I think if Poch was going to come back, he would have come straight in after Conte. Some people apparently at the club, you'll probably know more than me, Chris, are in favour of him. Other people with powerful voices apparently are not in favour of him. And I think, as Patrick was saying, we've seen the evidence that now he's having a discussion with Chelsea, because from Maurizio Pochettino's point of view, he actually needs to get a job with a big club that can play in the Champions League and try and do something. He's experienced it with Spurs and PSG. Chelsea would be, hate to say it, because, I'm not their biggest fan at all, would be a good choice of club for him. I mean, Nagelsmann apparently wanted to go to Chelsea straight away, but they said, no, we're going to have Lampard as an interim. So he said, well, you're not serious. So he is actually available, word has it. Now, is he the sort of manager who wants to come to Spurs? Well, he's a future elite manager, but let's be absolutely honest about this. We're not going to be in the Champions League unless there is a miracle. We're certainly not going to be challenging next season for the Premier League title. He's going to look at the recent history of the club. He's going to look at how the club do business, what support he would get. This is Nagelsmann or a similar character. But more importantly, he's going to look at the squad and go, well, I'm good, but I'm not that good. He did really well with Bayern Munich in his last job, and he couldn't keep his job there. And if you're an elite manager and you come in and work for ENIC and Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, it's a results business, they say. And that's why these elite managers keep going and not hanging around at the club. Not that Conte was ever going to do that. We all know that. So I fear that we'll get into the summer and names like Marco Silva will be talked about. Maybe, and I really like him, Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest. But I think that is the level that Spurs fans are going to have to get used to with a manager. Now, don't get me wrong. One of those two that I've just mentioned could get the job. It could be absolutely brilliant for us. Fulham have been great, but they've fallen off a little bit now. You know, Marco Silva, was he good at Everton? No, not really. He was quite good at Hull, his first job in the English game. Watford, well, who can be good at Watford? Because the Pozzo's just hire and fire like it's going out of fashion. So, you know, there's Arne Slot, isn't there, as well, at Feyenoord. But word is he's not overly keen to leave Holland. But these people can be persuaded. We've got to get somebody, in my opinion, that actually starts concentrating on academy footballers, young players. In other words, doing what Poch did when he first came in. And Paul Mitchell was at his side, but that didn't last very long. And that's a shame because, you know, players-wise, if Mitchell had hung around, we would have been, I think, in a lot better place as far as squad players and young players coming through. That's not to say that there aren't young players available to us. Sarr is a perfect example. So I don't think we're going to get a big manager. And I'm sorry to be negative, and I think big managers are put off by the owners a bit as well.
Where you just said there, Russ, that some people could be persuaded. Shouldn't it be a manager that really wants this job?
Yes.
Like a couple of you already said, you know, if Pochettino was given the job for the last 10 games of the season when Conte left, he would have come running. He loves the club. He wants to come back. There is unfinished business. Joe, are you a big Pochettino fan? Because Fabrizio Romano in the last 24 hours has come out and said it will take time for Spurs to appoint a manager. Daniel Levy is on it. And as Russ said there, you know, there may be certain people at the club not wanting Pochettino back. Why do you think that is?
I mean, it's a strange one. I wonder, there's a part of me that wonders what's in it for Poch. Because at the moment, he's kind of deified by all of us, and rightly so. He took a relatively mediocre club and made us fantastic, played some brilliant football. Some fantastic young players came through under his tutelage. Obviously got us to that Champions League final. And I think what a lot of people forget is that was a relatively threadbare Spurs side. That was probably a side that was past its best in terms of Pochettino's era. But I think maybe he's thinking, what if he comes back and it goes wrong? Kind of that you break up with someone and then you kind of think about it with rose-tinted spectacles and you get back together and you think, oh, I remember why it went wrong in the first place. I don't know. I wonder if maybe he thinks he's on a bit of a hiding to nothing there. I would love to see him back, to be honest. I don't think the kind of big elite manager experiment has worked. I liked Mourinho. I thought he was quite amusing. I think Conte was basically Mourinho, but without the humour. So I didn't really even have that. I think I just really want to see at the moment somebody who plays a fun, exciting brand of football. Ultimately, you want to enjoy going to watch your football team. And we're probably not going to win the league. City are too good and they're too rich. And we want to enjoy it when we go there every weekend. And I kind of think, for me, I'm kind of getting ready for the comments to go mad. I look at what's going on in kind of this big merry-go-round at the moment. And I think, do you know what? I think Graham Potter would be a decent fit for us. Good. Sorry, Patrick, mate. Good coach. Good coach. Good coach. Nice football. Do you know what? And kind of suits that ethos. I like to think of us as a relatively likable club. I think, okay, Conte with the kind of the big egomaniac, he'd have fitted in better at Chelsea as he did the first time around. Potter would have been a better fit for us. I wonder in terms of what's actually happening with this kind of big European managerial game of dominoes as well. So obviously Nagelsmann left Bayern, which really upset everything. And I get the impression that everybody's waiting to see what happens to Ancelotti at Madrid, because that will impact everything. Poch is always, Patrick, as you said, because he was at Espanyol, never wanted to go to Barcelona. So he's always on the other side of it, wanted to go to Madrid. Nagelsmann, okay, he could walk in pretty much anywhere. Pochettino, again, I mean, the Chelsea thing, like you're asking, Chris, I don't know if that's too similar to PSG. He kind of went from Spurs, and I get it. He wanted a big change. He went from a club where he's never given any money to a club where he had a ridiculous amount of money and an insane amount of talent, and it didn't go well. And those PSG fans got on his back. Well, Chelsea's a similar sort of thing. This is a club that spent hundreds and hundreds of millions on players that, I mean, Graham Potter didn't even know some of them were getting signed. He was turning up at the training ground and there'd be a new player there who was on 300 grand a week. And I just don't know how much of a fit that is for somebody who's more of a builder like Pochettino. In a very roundabout way to answer your question, I'd love to see Pochettino back. I don't buy him going to Chelsea. I don't think it's a good fit. I do think he's a loyal guy. I wonder if there's a little bit of mind games going on here, and he's trying to force Daniel Levy's hand, but who knows? We're at that stage where we're second guessing every move.
In your opinion, Joe, do you think that modern day managers should have more of a say in who the clubs actually sign? Because you mentioned there about Graham Potter, all of those players being signed in the summer for Chelsea. And of course, Antonio Conte, we heard him a number of times, Jed Spence, Dan Juma, to name a couple, club signings.
Yeah, well, exactly. It was the Jed Spence thing, obviously, where he said he didn't know who this guy was and he didn't want him. And I'm sure, like every other Tottenham fan, I've pinned all of my hopes for a brighter future on him and Destiny Udogie. And I'm watching their clips on Twitter, like they're the second coming. Jed Spence at Rennes, as far as I'm concerned, is the new Cafu. And we need to get him back as soon as we can. But yeah, I absolutely think they should. I think unless you've kind of got that, I suppose, that Arsene Wenger, David Dean relationship where you work really well together, you like each other, you have a similar outlook on football, I think a manager should absolutely decide or have a big say in who he's going to be coaching. And I think that's been part of the disconnect. I mean, obviously, Fabio Paratici was meant to be the answer to that. He saved Juventus, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure how much input he's got at the moment. I don't know if he's using his one phone call to ring up Daniel Levy and check in with what's going on at Spurs. I don't know. I would like to see a manager who kind of has more control on the signings, but also somebody who's a coach and likes to develop players, which is what Pochettino did so well.
I can't believe you want another Chelsea.
Chris, just to interject, sorry. This is an amazing opportunity for the right manager, our football club, to get it right. Brilliant fans, great stadium, out of this world training facilities, maybe new owners coming, who knows, maybe the current owners. But if we could find another Poch and he performed like that and went to another level, there is a chance that after a season, people will be saying, well, I'm glad Poch didn't come back. It's such a big opportunity. And I bet you Vincent Kompany is thinking about it seriously, because he'll know. He will know that at Burnley he's going to get nothing. Really, there's going to be no money. And, he knows what Tottenham is. He's a student of English football, has played in it for many years. Now he's managing. He could be the sort of bloke who could come in and the players couldn't challenge him on anything. Nobody's won.
But Russ, I think about Kompany, because I was thinking this the other day, and I just kind of wonder if he's... My concern there would be, even if he came in and did a brilliant job, and maybe this is negative Tottenham fan thinking, then he would just be waiting to take Pep's place when he eventually decides to go. That's because I agree with you. He's done an amazing job at Burnley, but that keeps coming back to me.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. But City is City, aren't they? Just because you're an old famous son doesn't mean that you're going to go back. I mean, they could say that Arteta will go back when Pep goes. It might not be Kompany. But I just think, just to make the point again, on a positive note, this is a real opportunity to come in the summer. And we all know we'd have to be patient yet again, unfortunately. But to start really building something and getting us all really loving the football club again, and not trying to sell our season tickets for home games on exchanges and somebody obviously always buys them. And this is the problem, you see. If people say, well, I'm not going, and somebody else uses a ticket, Daniel Levy sees a full stadium and all the upside down beers being sold and the revenues are coming in. So I think as fans, we've got to be a little bit cannier. But it's a big chance for somebody.
Just picking up on that, do you think the board will listen to the fans? Because it was very clear in that Tottenham Hotspur Stadium the last couple of weeks, the fans singing Pochettino's name. Now, we have spoken on this channel many, many times about club decisions. Sacking Pochettino, in my opinion, was a bad decision. He had more than enough credit in the bank to keep his job, taking us to a Champions League final, not spending a penny in 518 days. You then appoint Jose Mourinho. He gets us to a cup final. We sack him 6 days before a final. Another poor decision, in my opinion. We then wait 72 days for a manager. We're linked with all sorts of managers. Gattuso. We then appoint Nuno Espirito Santo. Didn't work out. Fans started singing, "You don't know what you're doing." He gets sacked in the morning. Antonio Conte come in. It's not worked. The fans are having their say, and I believe that the majority of fans, from what I've seen, from what I hear, from who I speak to, the majority of fans want Pochettino back. Will the board listen to what the fans want, and will they take notice?
They'll make rumblings, lip service. I think is all we'll get, lip service. You know, and I'm sure at Cambridge last night, Daniel Levy wasn't asked the question, is Mauricio Pochettino coming back directly? Because if it was posed, I'm sure it was taken out. I don't know that for sure, because it's not on the agenda, I don't think, at the moment, as bad a news that is for an awful lot of Spurs fans. But, you know, I said last time I was on with you, you know, how many people marry their ex-wife or husband? Very few. And that could be the mentality.
It's different, though. I know Joe said that as well. I think it's different because there is so much unfinished business. I think that, you know, for what Pochettino went through at Tottenham, you know, and the connection with the fans was incredible.
Yeah.
And the fact that he achieved top 4 consistently, took us to a Champions League final, didn't spend a penny in all that time. I just feel that if he was given the backing that perhaps Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte have had, you know, you never know. And I just feel that he needs to return at some point. Patrick, let's come to you on this. Do you think that Spurs seeing today that Chelsea are in talks with Poch, do you think there's going to be any movement?
I hope so. I think Russ is right, though. I mean, these guys will, you know, they spin us lie and lie, story after story. You know, Levy will come out and say that he knows how we feel and he wants what's best for the club and he spends money and all of this rubbish. But, you know, the thing is, I am indifferent. I'm one of the fans that I would love Poch back, but I'm also scared to bring him back because I know how it ended and I don't want to actually ruin the legacy that he has. And I understand that it's a massive job. It's not as simple as Poch turns up and we're going to start playing scintillating football again. Whoever comes in, it's a big rebuild. This team is so weird because for me, I feel that as bad as we are, we're only possibly 2 or 3 signings away from being a good team again under the right manager and under the right system. Scrap this 5 at the back rubbish, bring in another good centre-back to partner Romero, play with 3 in midfield, get a creative player in, allow the good players to play in their natural positions and play to their strengths. Sorry, we need a good goalkeeper as well. Hugo Lloris been fantastic for us, but you definitely are nowhere near the level we need if we're going to start playing out from the back, passing it around, all of this stuff. The guy's not good at distributing and passing under pressure. And then obviously that negativity creeps in and we end up fumbling and doing silly things. So 3 or 4 good players in and we can definitely go again. Because when I look at the teams that, like your Manchester Uniteds and your Newcastles, you wouldn't say player for player, they're way better than us. And even when you watch them throughout 90 minutes, they're not playing scintillating football throughout the majority of the game, but they play in phases and moments, and so do we. But then we're just so crap defensively. When you look at the numbers in terms of the goals we've conceded compared to the rest, it's chalk and cheese. But a good manager will change that. A good manager will get us playing on the front foot. A good manager will actually coach some of these players. Because, you know, Davinson Sanchez, he was a beast when he came in from Ajax. He was one of the best defenders in Europe. He was so quick, had a good turn of pace, read the game well. And for the last 3 or 4, 5 years, he's regressed massively because he hasn't been coached. He's always thrown in, got garbage minutes. Obviously, whenever he is thrown in, he's partnered with different centre-back pairings, back 4, back 5, all of this. And it's just like there's no structure in this club at the moment. And that's why we just keep going back and back and back. But if we do bring in Pochettino, he's got a massive job on his hands. I do want a good manager in. If it is Poch, just get it done. and then we can go again. It will take Daniel Levy back in him as well. I just don't know if Daniel Levy is honest enough and can get rid of the ego and just say, you know what, I've made a mistake. Here you go, Poch. Here's the keys to the kingdom, and go again. Because we also forget that, I mean, Joe said it, you said it, Chris, Russ has said it. Poch did wonders. 3 transfer budgets windows without a signing is unheard of. It will never happen again, no matter what level you play at. And the fact that he had us finishing second, third, and third during that time, playing good football, it's kind of like you forget that he was doing it with his hands tied behind his back. And we didn't play at home. We didn't have a home stadium. We were playing at Wembley as well. There was all of that hoodoo to begin with when we couldn't win a game at Wembley, and we still finished third that season. So he's worked miracles, and maybe if he is given some stability, he could be a fantastic manager. But it does need to happen, and happen soon, because like Ross is saying, some of the names we're linked with, they're so underwhelming. And yeah, they could come good, because when Pochettino first was linked with us, I was like, what? Poch from Southampton? But obviously it worked out well. But I just don't know. I'm so disillusioned now, because we've just seen so many catastrophes under Levy. My head's all over the place. I don't really know what to think anymore.
I want to ask all of you this question, or prediction. Russ, let's start with you. Just give me a name of who you think Spurs will employ and who will be our manager at the start of next season.
It's a flip of a coin between two. I think it might be Luis Enrique. That's who I think it will be.
I'm going to predict Brendan Rodgers. Not that I want him there, but that's who I think Spurs will go for.
Yeah.
Joe, what do you think?
There's a part of me that's thinking Arne Slot, just because Spurs are so reactive, and it's kind of like, oh, Ten Hag's Dutch, he's doing well. Let's look at the next guy who's done well in the Eredivisie. And I don't know. It feels like a very Spurs appointment, but like Russ says, it's a flip of a coin.
Patrick, who are you going for?
I think Enrique will be our next manager, and I don't want him. I don't think he'll do well here. I would either want Nagelsmann or Poch. Those are my 2 leading candidates, but I think it will be Enrique, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just quickly, why don't you think it would work under Luis Enrique if he was appointed?
Because he would need a whole new 11. Fantastic manager with the right tools. We don't have the right tools. He was great at Barcelona, but he had basically the best team in the world. Played good football with Spain, but ultimately they didn't do anything. And other than Barcelona and Spain, his club tenureship has been really poor, and it kind of gets swept under the carpet. People forget he's not had a real good club managerial career. And I feel that in the Premier League, with all the good teams around him, and the fact he's going to have to adapt to the Premier League, bring in players, I just don't see it working.
I'll tell you what, Chris, whoever the next manager is, I think it will mirror how ambitious Daniel Levy really is. I think it'll be significant. Yeah.
I feel that we just need to go for a project manager rather than a win now manager. And, it has to happen. Disappointment must be right. But I feel like we've said this in the last couple of years as well. And I feel like we've gone round in circles since Pochettino left. That's why I probably feel like Pochettino is the answer to come back and just do it properly this time. Russ, let's stay with you. Earlier today, it was announced that Fabio Paratici's appeal against his 2.5-year ban from football has been rejected by the Italian Olympic Committee. The Athletic have just reported that Spurs are now considering their response. Scott Munn is meant to be starting his job on the 1st of July. Fabio now can't work. Fabrizio Romano has said that Daniel Levy is on it for the manager search. What do you think about this whole situation? Because surely Fabio has got to end up leaving the club.
Well, he would have thought so. But he could, he could work in one of the suites and still talk to Daniel Levy about the important stuff, couldn't he? There's ways of doing it. The Paratici equivalent of Mourinho in a laundry basket at a Champions League game, but of course, if you get caught, then Spurs would be in big trouble. I don't think they take a risk. So. Yeah, I think that Scott Munn will be saying to Daniel Levy, if he hasn't already, arrivederci, Fabio Paratici, and that's that. But it's just another thing in a litany of of cock-ups and things that have gone wrong. You know, the club weren't to know, I don't think, the extent of what was going on over in Italy. Maybe they should have investigated it. Maybe somebody told them and they said, oh, it doesn't matter. I don't know. But I don't think he can stay at the club now. And, you know, he's inextricably linked to bringing in Conte and Stellini and, you know, the Italian vibe at the club. I mean, I've spoken to quite a few fans who say, I don't care who the next manager is, it can't be an Italian. I won't, you know, I'll cancel my season ticket. So whether that's fair or not, I don't know. But I think that he'll be gone. That it's not a guess. I think it's pretty certain.
Joe, surely it makes Fabio just like a glorified office worker, doesn't it, if he stayed at Tottenham?
What I find insane is that Daniel Levy knew that these investigations were pending. He knew that, and he still hired this guy and put him on mega bucks, and he was fated as the future of the football club. And this guy was under investigation, and that investigation is now growing and spiraling, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to work, not in just Italian football, but in European football, full stop. And I can't believe you would offer this man a job, such a big salary, so much responsibility. Yeah, I mean, if he's involved in some capacity, I don't know what that might be. I'd be interested to see what people think behind the scenes, because he's lost all credibility in the eyes of fans. Certainly the fans I speak to, me, my friends, my family. I wonder if Russ talks about the Italian connection. I wonder if, and this might just be incredibly lazy journalism on my part, there's an Australian connection, because Scott Munn, Australian, Postecoglou at Celtic. I mean, but then that's kind of assuming like they know each other because they're Australian. And there's 20 million.
They probably do.
Yeah.
Good shout.
But I don't know. But I mean, they play good football, that Celtic team. A lot of people really enjoyed him and thinking he's moving on to maybe I don't want to upset Scottish football fans, but a more high profile league. So I'm not sure. Maybe he would be an interesting shout.
Who do you think will be in charge and have the overall say of the next managerial appointment, though, Joe? Will it be Daniel Levy?
I think it's Daniel Levy. I think at the end of the day, I get the impression that Spurs is like Succession. Like there can be all these people in really prominent roles, but ultimately there's a dictator at the top. And that's fine. And that works sometimes in business, but that's the only way I can kind of rationalize this idea that all these people with huge reputations keep coming in and it keeps going disastrously wrong, because the decision-making process maybe isn't changing and it's still the same guy. And I think he did an amazing thing for Tottenham, and he dragged us out of relative obscurity and certainly a club that weren't particularly financially viable, and took us to a place, I think, in kind of 2001 we never thought we would end up being. But that being said, he can't decide what we are now. Financially, we can't compete with City, United, teams like that. So he doesn't want to spend a lot of money, which is what someone like Luis Enrique would probably need. Like Patrick said, I think having Ollie Skip and Holberg is very different to having Xabi and Iniesta. So we would certainly need to spend a lot of money to satisfy him. Equally, at the other end of the spectrum, you've got your Brightons and your Brentfords, who are brilliantly run, fantastic scouting networks, very data-driven. We're not that either. And I think that Levy doesn't have a coherent policy. And ever since Poch, he's kind of, which I think he may have got lucky with, that Pochettino appointment, to be honest. And it drove us onwards. And I think he's been lurching from one guess to the next.
Patrick, let's come to you. Let's talk about Daniel Levy's comments. Of course, a video was published late Wednesday evening by Cambridge University. He was there, I think, expecting to do or answer questions about business, finance and economics. And then it ended up being a lot of Tottenham Hotspur questions. Whether that was planned or not, I'm not so sure. He was talking about Harry Kane and said he can absolutely win a trophy at Spurs, but being a legend is also important. The fact that he's our top goal scorer, he's making history. I hope one day that there is a statue of Harry Kane outside the stadium. Just talking about Harry Kane, do you think that Harry Kane will be a Spurs player next season? And what did you make of Daniel Levy's comments overall?
I do think Kane will be a Spurs player next season. And I just feel that for Kane, it would probably make sense to wind down his contract. Him to force another move or try and force another move this summer, I don't think it'll go down well. Still got a year left on his contract. And unless a club comes in with a mega bid, I don't see him leaving. I can't see Levy with everything that's going on. I mean, as much as I dislike the guy, he is no fool. He can definitely hear the mumblings and, you know, what we're singing, the discontent at home games, even away games. We've been up winning against our teams, and you can hear fans screaming, you know, Levy out. So he knows what's going on. He knows how we feel. So for him to then turn around and sell our best player, it would be catastrophic for him. There'd be no way back. So I can't see him selling unless Kane really throws up a massive stinker and was basically, you know, goes on strike. I don't think Kane would do that. He's a bit too professional for that. So, you know, next year when his contract winds down, it's a different story. Obviously, the talk is of him going to Man United. I can't really see that. I don't know if that's a good move for Kane as well. If you're leaving to win trophies, I know people saying Kane might be the catalyst to take them from where they are to guarantee trophies, but it's no guarantee either. So it's a bit of a weird one. The Man City one made sense for obvious reasons. Man United, I'm not so sure. But going back to your points about Harry Kane and Harry Kane's already a legend, regardless of what happens next. I just feel that with what Daniel Levy said, I mean, if anyone watched it, because as soon as it came out, I didn't want to read the transcript. I watched the whole interview so I could actually get a feel for what was being said. Didn't take things out of context, because obviously on Twitter and online, people will sensationalize things and you may get outraged without knowing the whole story or how it was said. So I watched it, and he was very short and sharp with his answers. He didn't really go into any detail in anything he said. He didn't expand on anything. So you could take what he was saying either way. It was a lot that was left open, even when he did answer a question. Because even him saying Harry Kane can win trophies, someone should have said, how? What is your plan? What is your next vision? What's the next steps? Because we've been close to winning trophies for a number of years with a better Spurs team, with better managers. And obviously right now we've got, you know, the Spurs team isn't great, let's be honest. We don't have a manager. We don't have a director of football. There's so much stuff up in the air. So how do you envision Kane winning trophies at the moment? So I would have loved for someone to actually ask him direct questions. He's very calculated. I mean, the guy never comes out and answers questions, and then all of a sudden he pops up at Cambridge answering Spurs questions. It was a bit weird. So I don't know, you know, if he was doing that on purpose because he didn't think it would be football orientated and somehow swung round to that. But you know, with all of that being said, I watched the whole thing and I didn't learn anything more than what I already knew about Levy. Didn't really answer anything with everything that he did say. He's a very smart guy, very sharp, but it just left me, you know, feeling exactly the same. I didn't watch that and think, oh, I understand where he's coming from, or oh, you know, I feel a bit better now watching that. There was nothing there.
Right, so let's come to you. Daniel Levy said, am I happy that we haven't won more than one trophy in the last 15 years? Absolutely not. But I also think we've had some fantastic times. The ultimate goal is to win trophies. That is clearly what we are trying to do. It's easier said than done. What did you make of Daniel Levy's comments overall?
Well, I can tell you one thing. It was interesting what Patrick was saying about Harry Kane. Daniel, if I had a business, I needed somebody to run it, I'd hire Daniel Levy because I know it'd make money. But if I had a football club, with respect to Daniel, I would say, I don't think it's quite for you, this football lark. That's how I feel about him. I think he's a brilliant, brilliant businessman. And on that note, I think, Patrick, and I'm sorry to say this to you, I think you're wrong on selling Harry Kane. I don't think he'd hesitate for a big enough fee. Daniel Levy is a businessman. He could not tolerate Harry Kane walking away in a year's time for nothing. He needs money. The debt of the club is significant. We've got to invest in a lot of players. I think that, assuming Harry wanted to go, of course, I think he would sell him in the summer.
Do you think so? What, this summer? You think he'd sell him to Man United and risk the wrath?
Yeah, it would not surprise me, Patrick.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I agree.
It really wouldn't. And most of the Spurs fans, I'm pretty sure, would say, good luck, Harry. Thank you for everything. I personally would love him to see out the rest of his career at Spurs and win not one trophy, but maybe two or even three, because he's got some good years left in him. But I don't think Daniel Levy would hesitate at all, because it's business. The only thing that is good for Harry Kane, though, and us with Harry Kane, is that he is an asset, a big asset at a football club when you're trying to attract a manager and a really good coach. So, but I honestly believe that Levy would sell him.
Do you think he'll be a Spurs player at the start of next season, Russ?
I hope so, but it's a flip of a coin. Like everything with Tottenham. And incidentally, I don't think it is just Daniel Levy who makes a decision. I think he has the final say-so. I think Donna Cullen, who is known since those heady days at Cambridge University, has a lot of sway talking to him in his ear about all sorts of things to do with the football club, including the football side of the club. So, but ultimately, it's his decision. But I thought, look, you know, fair play. He went to Tottenham when he was 7 years old and all that kind of stuff. And he loves the club, but really it was investment banking he wanted to be in. That's what he went into. And it was a little bit of luck that saw him get into football. He really had no intention of getting into football. There's nothing wrong with that. There's quite a few chairmen of football clubs who, you know, Francis Lee, all those years ago in Manchester City, after he stopped playing, he was one of the biggest toilet roll makers in the whole of the UK. But then he decided he'd come, you know, run Manchester City because football was in his blood. I don't think that is the case with Daniel Levy. I do think, and I thought it was interesting, he said, I can confirm we have not been in negotiations in the last few months, which I thought was a really interesting thing for him to say about prospective new owners. Now, I interpreted that one of two ways. Number one is we're about to start talking to people, or number two is we have had discussions in the past, but probably because of the valuation, nothing ever happened. So he didn't say that we're not going to sell it. You know, it was largely about business. And he sounded a little bit uncomfortable with some of the questions about Tottenham Hotspur. But credit to Daniel Levy. He said that whilst he's been chairman, they have made some poor decisions on buying players. You can say that again, Daniel. The football club have definitely done that. You know, Davinson Sanchez is an example, 42 million. I'm not calling him out. I don't agree with the booing that happened at the weekend. But, you know, can neither of these elite managers, Mourinho or Conte, get a tune out of Tanguy Ndombele, who's phenomenally talented and, you know, just loaned out? It costs us 65 million quid. I think he could still do something, Ndombele, for the club with the right coach.
Yeah, same.
You know, they have made some dreadful decisions with managers and certainly with the playing squad. And we all know that. And, you know, it upsets me because it could have been so much better. If Poch had been given money, we wouldn't have got some duds that he brought in, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, we certainly played entertaining football under Pochettino, and you would have thought that Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte would have brought success to the football club, but they didn't. Joe, let's come to you. Daniel Levy also said, I think anyone that buys a football club, they may not understand or have the connection with the fans, but they do want the same thing as the fans, which is to win. What do you make of these comments?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, I would ask Blackburn fans and Blackpool fans and Macclesfield and things like that. And I mean, Mike Ashley at Newcastle. But I do think Levy has Spurs' best interests at heart. I do. But I think he's approaching it from a financial point of view, not an emotional one, which is obviously totally different to all of us. I also thought he said, what was it? He said that under my time at Spurs, 22 years at Spurs, it's been amazing progress, but not as a fan. And we still want to get a trophy. We hope the journey's not over. Now, I'm with Russ kind of reading into that, saying we hope the journey's not over. It's like, well, that's down to you, right? So maybe he's talking to other people. Maybe he knows that his time might be at an end. I mean, yeah, it's been credit to him for speaking because he was in an academic forum. And I mean, you got to love football fans and managing to turn a world-class kind of academic, famous institute presidents go there and are allowed to speak, and it was turned into a big football chat. So I love that. Yeah, I don't know. I do think he's got the club's best interests at heart, but I don't think he's the right man to be running a football club. I think, like Russ says, he's a great businessman, but right now, I think it needs something else, and whether that's someone with deeper pockets who wants to spend the money, I'm not sure I want that. I would rather see someone come in who I know is a fan and absolutely loves it. I think for me, that would make me feel a little bit better.
And I think, Chris, the communication generally from the club, as far as the chairman and the board is concerned, to the fans is not really very good. Other clubs do it far better. I mean, Daniel Levy is a bit like the Wizard of Oz, isn't he? Oh, that's where the Wizard Levy lives, in there. And he comes out, you know, once every fortnight. There's the wizard. But he's not speaking to us. And he said he was quite proud of the fact at Cambridge University. He said, I very rarely give interviews. Well, hang on a minute, mate. You're the chairman of one of the biggest football clubs in England, if not Europe, a very valuable company. And maybe you should change the habit of a lifetime and actually start communicating more to the Supporters Trust and doing interviews, albeit sanitized ones, you know, with the press people at Spurs, putting them up on YouTube, you know, show that you're human. And I think the fans almost forgive you a little more because his perception amongst the fans generally, certainly 50% of them, if not 60, I would say, is they don't want him at the club anymore. There are lots of fans who do want him at the club because they recognise where we've come in 22 years. But at the end of the day, for me personally, I want to see good football, and I want us to win something, and I want the place to be rocking. I mean, the last 2 times I've been at the ground, the singing's okay, but it's not like it was when it first opened. It's certainly, you know, there's something missing, and it's trepidation maybe from the fans, fear, acknowledgement that what we're watching really is as good as it gets at the moment, all sorts of emotions. And I do think the club communicating with supporters can make things a little better. But it's up to them. At the moment, they choose not to do it.
But Russ, you're right. Sorry, Chris, because I'm totally with you, Russ, on this. It's the chairman of a football club. They work for us, right? Because ultimately, fans are the ones who put money in the club's pocket and are the reason they're able to function. And these chair people are the custodians of an institution which belongs to a community and a fan base locally and globally. So you're right, to choose not to do interviews, you don't really have that right. Because if the Supporters Trust wants a dialogue with you, it's your duty to open that dialogue up. And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I mean, look, simple PR tricks to get him to be seen as more human. Get him to do an online chat with Beyonce. You're going to be playing at our football club stadium.
No, not
that.
I would watch that.
Not Beyonce.
It seems incredible. Put him in a Harry Kane shirt and chuck him in an F1 car. You know, take some photos. Humanize yourself a little bit. I'm sorry. I mean, I haven't been drinking yet. I'm going to have a glass after the show.
Well,
you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, let me ask you that then, Russ. If and I'll ask all 3 of you the same question. If you had the chance to ask Daniel Levy a question, if you were in that room, what would you have asked him?
I would ask him, do you think you have a future as chairman of this football club, given the fact that we have won 1 trophy in your tenureship?
What about you, Joe?
I think I would ask him, what's your philosophy and therefore your plan for this club?
Patrick?
Who he wants to be the next manager, and when that manager comes in, will he allow him to actually relay his philosophies and tactics and vision to the team and back him properly? As in, don't get involved in football matters. Allow the actual manager to have his say on the players he brings in. And will you trust him and back him and allow him the time to then be successful?
I think Daniel Levy probably feels that he's backed every manager that's been there.
I mean, the mistake he made, wasn't it, you're right, firing Poch, because that 350 million quid that Conte and Mourinho and Nuno and everybody else kind of in between had with the changing philosophies and stuff, that 350 million quid, I genuinely believe, if that was given to Poch after that Champions League final, incrementally over several transfer windows, this might be wishful thinking, we'd be the North London club sitting top of the table right now, not them. I don't know if that's overstating it, but I think that lack of coherence, and then it's just been panic stations since then. So yeah, he probably has backed them, but because it's not coherent, it's just throwing money away.
But we all know as Spurs fans that we've always been 2 players, 3 players short of something very, very special. And I think that's what's frustrating a lot of us and has done in recent years. Let's move on to talk about the Newcastle game, which of course is a massive game at St James's Park this Sunday, 2 p.m. kickoff. Spurs are currently 5th in the Premier League table. We have played 31 games. We have 53 points. We are 3 points away from the top 4. Newcastle, of course, are 4th. The next 3 games for us, we play Newcastle, Manchester United and Liverpool. A very, very difficult couple of weeks coming up. Newcastle have only lost 4 games all season, and they have only lost 1 home game, and that was against Liverpool back in Feb. Patrick, let's start with you on the Newcastle game. How are you feeling ahead of this game? Can Spurs get a point or 3?
If I'm being 100% honest, I'm not feeling very confident at all. The funny thing is, football is such a humbler. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, yeah, we're going to finish 3rd. Newcastle don't score enough goals. Man United are a bit shaky and they're in 3 competitions, so their eyes are going to be taken off the ball. And we can just continue to play once a week. Yes, defensively, we're not good, but we do score a lot of goals, and I think we're back 3rd. But then since then, I mean, we had such... I know no fixture is easy, but if you look at our fixture running on paper, we had Everton, Southampton, and then Bournemouth, which are 3 favourable fixtures. You'd expect us to bag 9 points out of those 3 games. Yes, it might not always be a smooth sail or easy ride, but you'd expect us to win all 3 of those games. We end up picking up 2 points out of 9. And obviously now we are 3 points behind Newcastle, 6 behind United, and we played a game more than both of them. Newcastle have the meanest defence in the league. They've only shipped in or conceded 24 goals, which is insane at this stage of the season. So defensively, they're solid. Nick Pope loves a clean sheet. He's kept millions of clean sheets. They're a good outfit. They're a good team. Player for player, like I keep saying, you may look at, well, actually, to be fair, they've got a few players I would rather swap with our starting 11, but their squad probably isn't as good as our squad is probably stronger than theirs, but they play a brand of team football. They play for each other. We don't seem to have an identity when we play. We just literally pass the ball to Kane or Son and say, go to work. Or we give it to Kulu on the wing, work some magic. Perisic, dig out a cross, and hopefully we get lucky. But they actually play a brand of football. And obviously over the course of 30 games, 38 games, 31 games, 32, wherever we are, you'll see that slowly, seep in. So I'm not confident. They've only lost 4 games all season. As Joe was saying, or I think it was Russ, I can't remember, but one of the 2 lads was saying they've only lost once at home, and that's to Liverpool. So I'm not confident at all. I would have thought I would have went into this game with more confidence because we would have been off the back of probably three wins. We're off the back of 2 draws and a loss to crap teams. So the funny thing is football's crazy, and there's always a puncher's chance. We could go there and get a result because Tottenham are Tottenham, and we always somehow seem to pull something out of the bag when we're down and out. And when we're not expected to win, we somehow win. But when we're meant to win, we don't. It's so weird. But if I'm being honest, I'm not confident, and I don't expect us to pick anything up out of this game, unfortunately.
Patrick, do you expect the same starting 11 under Stellini? Because if Clement Longley is out injured, does Davinson Sanchez come in? And of course, Danjuma scored at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against Bournemouth last weekend. Does he get his first start in the Premier League for Tottenham?
I think if Longley was fit, we would have played exactly the same team because this guy will never change things up. But because Longley is injured, he will go. I feel he'll go to a back 4. It will be Davies and Davies. So apologies. It will be it will be Dyer, Romero, Porro, and Perisic as a back 4. And I don't know who will be in the 3. I think he may put Sarr in with Højbjerg and Skip, and then play the same front 3 that we always play. I don't think Danjuma will start, but I do feel he'll play a role off the bench. So I feel that it's only because of the injury his hand's been forced. Otherwise, it'd be the same old same.
Russ, how are you feeling? I know you're making the trip up to St James's Park. You feeling confident?
Not particularly. If we get the first goal, we've got a chance. If they get the first goal, with a player like Guimaraes in midfield, who is such a great little player, can dictate a game. They're coming off the back of a defeat. If they score first, I do fear for us there, really. I mean, it is the sort of game that Tottenham should be turning up at and thinking, yeah, why can't we win here? We're going to win here because we want to finish in the top 4. Trouble is, so do they. And they have momentum. I know they lost their last game, but over the last few games, they've played pretty well. And it's going to be a very, very tough game. I'm looking forward to seeing the stadium. I haven't been there for quite some years since it was redeveloped. It looks pretty awesome. And hopefully, you know, Harry Kane can have his shooting boots on, or Sonny and Harry, and we can win. But I'm not going to be jumping on the train at Stevenage Sunday morning, particularly hopeful. But once you get in the ground and you smell the grease paint and the liniment, who knows? I might be more optimistic.
I spoke to a few Newcastle fans a couple of days, Russ, and they've said all season that place has been absolutely buzzing. The Newcastle fans are absolutely loving it right now. And as I said earlier, they've only lost one game at home, and that was against Liverpool. What are you expecting there, atmosphere-wise?
Oh, it's such an important game for them because they lost their last one. And if you look at the table, they know, because they'll know that we've got United and Liverpool coming up. They know if they can win this game against us, they're pretty nailed on for the top 4 in Champions League football, which would be an extraordinary achievement for them. And that's why it's such a big, big game for us. So I expect it to be a pressure cooker. None other than that. And no place for the faint-hearted. Chris will be fine with the rest of the Spurs fans. But it's going to be a difficult afternoon. But, you know, who knows?
We'll come to score predictions in a second. Joe, how are you feeling ahead of this game against Newcastle?
I mean, I've got no hope whatsoever. Just being totally honest. I mean, they beat us at home, and that felt like quite a transitional shift to power. I'm not really even looking at the top 4 and looking above us. I'm thinking Brighton, Villa, Liverpool. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, the way things are, I'd have us finishing 8th. So I don't know. I think it's a massive game. Like I said, they beat us at home. I really don't hold out any hope. I think they're much more coherent. They've got a much more clear tactical plan and a manager who wants to be there and knows what he's doing. That being said, if Son wants to bend another one in from the edge of the area, or like Russ says, if Kane has a good day, we've always got a chance because we've got a couple of really fantastic players. I think anything past that, I'm sorry, I don't really give us a chance.
What have you made of Kieran Trippier? He seems to be a real leader for Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, he's a funny one, isn't he, Trips? Because when Walker left, I was kind of slated Trips quite a lot because he didn't have any of the pace or that kind of directness that made Walker such a brilliant player. And it's only kind of after Trippier left Spurs and we obviously went on to win the league at Atletico, and then we since have been absolutely unable to find any kind of right back, right wing back, whatever you want to call it, to save our lives. Yeah, he's a fantastic player. And the fact that he still regularly features for England and gets in England squads and stuff is testament to what a great player he is. And I think he's kind of one of those signings that, a bit like when City got, I mean, players like Robinho and Adebayor and stuff, once somebody with a decent bit of profile comes to a club, it gets other players to kind of join the project. And yeah, I think he's been a fantastic signing, and he's still a great player. And I would love him back at Spurs in a heartbeat, given our right back situation.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Last 2 questions. Patrick, score prediction for Sunday and where you think Spurs will end up at the end of the season in the Premier League table.
Unfortunately, I'm going to go 2-0 Newcastle, and I'm hoping it's like a jinx and it's the other way. But if I'm being honest, Newcastle are a much better team away from home. The pressure's on us, not them. And I feel they just passes off the park and just, put us to the sword. I think ideally, if we don't finish in the top 4, I want us to finish 8th. I don't want us in any sort of European football if it's not the Champions League. And then it gives us time to really reset and go again. But I think we're finished 5th, if I'm being honest. I can't see us finishing 6th, 7th and 8th, which would be the lower down we feel, or the lower down the table we are, it really drums the message home to Daniel Levy that this isn't good enough. It's not been good enough for years. And I feel that if we did somehow sneak Champions League football, it would paper over so many cracks. And then in the summer, Levy will come out and say, yes, we know that everything's not been great, but it's another successful season, because Champions League football for him is the holy grail. And he would then turn it around and say that all of us fans have been prima donnas and babies and the team is still doing well. So it's almost like I don't want us to get Champions League football just to drum the message home. But then if we don't get Champions League football, we need to finish 8th or 9th to really send a direct and clear message to the board. But I feel I won't get that, and we'll finish 5th annoyingly, and we'll be stuck in Europa playing that horrible Sunday-Thursday cycle, which is disgusting, and none of us like that.
Do you know, you saying about those competitions, Patrick, if it was Europa League or Europa Conference League, you know, even when we were in the Europa Conference League last year, I was like, okay, right, go and win the competition. Like West Ham are taking it really seriously. You know, you're in this competition, go and win it. Would you not have that attitude of one of those competitions? Or is it a bit snobby with Spurs fans of like,
no,
we
I would, but the managers never seem to mirror our desire, and that's the annoying thing. And even Poch, dare I say, people don't call him out on this, sometimes it felt like Poch would play lesser or weakened teams in the cups, and then we would go out, and obviously he wanted Champions League in the league, and I get it, but we had real good opportunities to win cups under Poch, and he sometimes turned his nose up at them. So if we were in these competitions and we really went full tilt to win them, then I'd love to be in it. But it always seems that the managers don't really take them seriously, so it's almost like a waste of time. So I don't know. It depends who the manager is. It's a great question, Chris. It really depends who the manager is. If he's going to bring you through, really take it seriously, and then we push on. But if he's going to act like the managers have recently, then I'd rather not be in there.
They've all done it. There is obviously something there in that. I think they've all done it. You know, Sheffield United recently, you know, coming out of the FA Cup, and I think that's where a lot of people have been. You know, the frustration has really grown since then. Russ, let's come to you. Score prediction and where you think Spurs will end up in the Premier League table.
Sadly, 3-1 Newcastle, 6th Europa League.
You told me you were going to be positive on this show tonight.
Well, I'll be positive if we play 4 at the back. Not sure.
I don't know whether you've come out of anything positive this evening.
Yeah, I have suggested a couple of managers. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. It's not good. I think, you know, we'll finish 6th, just to underline it, because then we got Man United and Liverpool, and we know what can happen in those games. And I think that's roughly where we are anyway.
I'm going to go 1-1 and 5th. Joe, what are you going for?
Love that optimism, Chris. And also, Russ, just get ready for that 5 at the back and Tanganga coming in on Sunday, just to compound your misery. I think 3-1 Newcastle. I think it'll be a comfortable win, maybe a Harry Kane goal. And I think we'll probably end up finishing 7th and having to play in the Conference League. I would like to see us, to be honest, I'd like to see us, if it's not top 4, I'd like to see us finish 8th, just so we only have domestic football to focus on. But it'd be very Spurs to finish in the Conference League.
I've never had all 3 guests say an opposition win. It is the first.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
I'm not.
That's where we are right now.
We're still going to be there, Chris, in the trenches in the northeast, aren't we?
I'll be singing while we're drawing 1-1. That's it.
Good. I'll buy you a beer. A pint of Newquay Brown after the game.
I might need it. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back. Please tell everyone where they can find you on social media and what you're up to at the moment.
Yes, it's just Joe Forrester TV on all the social platforms. And please go and listen to Rose Ed, the podcast. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Patrick, it's been fantastic having you on for the very first time. I know you're back with us in a couple of weeks' time. Where can everyone find you and what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, once again, Chris, thanks for having me on. Russ and Joe, it's been a pleasure. It's great linking up with good Spurs fans and just chopping it up. But follow me on Twitter, Patrick Tyrant. It's at the bottom of the screen, and then you'll see everything that I'm on. I'm on quite a few podcasts and shows. So yeah, follow me on there, and you'll be able to catch up with everything I'm doing.
Well, thank you very much. And Russ, pleasure having you back.
Thank you so much.
You're back on the radio?
Yes, 10 o'clock tomorrow, Nation Radio, fabulous music, online, DAB, app, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, give us a go, and you could win 10 grand in cash tomorrow.
Nice.
So
Wow.
they'll have people rushing for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Tune in. How can I win the money? And Mr.
Tuning
Levy,
in.
you can't play.
Russ, Joe, and Patrick, thanks so much for your time this evening. Let's hope that Spurs can get the 3 points at St James's Park against Newcastle on Sunday. Fingers crossed. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. And until the next time, come on, you Spurs.
Nice one, guys.